Well, hello, friends. Thank you for joining me on this Thursday edition of the Daily Connection. We're getting into Revelation chapter 21, and if we're sticking with that key word theme, the key word here is going to be new, and everything's new. And God Himself is going to declare that as we read through verses 1 through 4 together. Let's get into it. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne, "Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and He will live with them. They will be His peoples, and God Himself will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away." All right, so again, our transitional word at the beginning of 21 is the word then, connecting it back with what we've seen take place. And of course, what's just taken place is that final judgment whereby death and Hades are thrown in the lake of fire, which is the final judgment destination. It talks about all the dead being given up. There's and whoever's name is not found in the book of life. Verse 15 of chapter 20 is thrown into the lake of fire. So here is God's final judgment against sin and death for all eternity. And the result of that, now that sin has been purged, we're told a new heaven and a new earth have now come into creation, have now come into John's revelation. He's now seeing this, and he notices it says that there was no more sea. So one of the things that can resemble is that there's nothing to separate anymore. The sea separates us. It's created people groups and nations and cultures. Well, in this case, there's going to be one people group, one nation, one culture, and it's going to be a people dedicated to God. And so there's no longer a sea. And it says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. And notice this. It says, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Prepared by who? Prepared by God the Father. Because this is going to be His dwelling. Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and He will live with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and will be their God. So in a sense, we have the restored garden. Everything that the garden was in creation prior to the fall, Genesis 3, is now being represented by the New Jerusalem and God's very presence living and dwelling with His people. He will wipe away every tear. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away. So all that was associated with corruption and sin, it's all done away. And now we're experiencing the very presence of God in His full and complete revelation. Because sin is not present, then man will have no reason to fear His holiness. Man will still continue to worship His holiness. We'll still be in awe of His holiness, but we'll be able to enjoy His presence, because there'll be nothing in us inherently that can separate us from God in that sense. And it says this, verse 5, Then the one seated on the throne said, "Look, I'm making everything new." He said, "Right, because these words are faithful and true." Now, I want us to pay attention to this, because the whole point of this was for John to record the revelation. And because he says these things are faithful and true, he's basically saying you can take it to the bank. It's a done deal. What you have seen is as good as done. I will bring it about. I will bring it to fruition. And as a result of that, I will be God, because I am, it's done, he says in verse 6. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He is the one who will indeed see it through. He will bring it about. You know what, friends? That's a reason to celebrate. That's a reason to get excited. To know that what we now know as reality will one day be totally and completely remade by God into the perfection that He intended in the initial creation. That man's corruption, obviously ruined and brought cursing upon. Now the curse has been dealt with. The corruption of the devil and all those who align themselves with him have been judged finally and completely in the lake of fire. And we now see that the redeemed will spend eternity with God in heaven. And not only should that motivate us to get excited, but it also motivate us to gospel ministry. So again, we're coming to the end of a year, 2023. It's been a difficult year. I don't know that we could say it was as difficult as some of the previous ones, but it still had its difficulties for various reasons. And we love the idea of turning the chapter. We love the idea of starting a brand new year. We usually set things like New Year's resolutions, goals, things like that. But as we read this, let's understand that there's coming a day when we're gonna turn the chapter, when we're gonna turn the page, when we're gonna relinquish the old for the final time. There's not going to be any new page. It's going to be new to the greatest degree that new could come, and it's going to be that way for eternity. And let's look forward to that. But let's also understand that should motivate us to a life of commitment, a life of Great Commission living, making disciples through sharing the gospel and through helping those who are believers to grow in their faith. Well, love you, friends. I pray your Thursday is great and good, and I know you're looking forward to that Friday, and of course we're going to usher in the weekend and look at that New Year's Day to coming soon. But until we're together for this coming Sunday in the celebration of our Lord, live sent.